A function is a reusable block of code that can be called anywhere from our program. It's a reusable block of code that can be called anywhere in our program. Um, to explain this, you need to understand the keywords in the definition of a function. The keyword here, the first one that I'll pick is a block of code. What is a block of code? A block of code is basically in JavaScript codes that we have in between this coily bracket set of code or set of instructions that come in between this coily bracket is a block of code. So a set of instruction that comes in between this coily brackets might be to say console.log, and I just want to say console.log hello. So this is an instruction, but this instruction is anonymous. There is no name. There is no how I can reuse this. So for me to be able to reuse this, I have to give it a name. In JavaScript, you can write the name. So let's give it a name. Let's call it add. It's showing red because it's expecting to take in some set of inputs, and that's why we will put a bracket in front of the name. If we are going to be having some set of inputs for this function, we'll put it here. Another thing to note in JavaScript is that a function is usually preceded by a keyword called function. So this is a simple function. Let me change the name from add. Let me use a simpler name. Let me call it say hello. So this is a simple function definition in JavaScript. The function says hello. The function name is say hello. This keyword is just how you do it in JavaScript. For every programming language, they have the convention on how a function is being defined. In the JavaScript, a function is being defined by writing the keyword function. There are other ways, and I would explain that, of defining a function in JavaScript. But for now, note that the keyword function comes before the name, and after the keyword function is a bracket. The bracket takes in the set of inputs, and inside the coily bracket you have your block definition, what defines what is happening in the function. So imagine we said a function performs a specific task. So I don't like that this um, GitHub action is kind of entering into what I'm writing. So GitHub Copilot, sorry. So I want to disable for now, yeah, so that I can teach. Um, so let's write another function. Let's look at the name. The name says a function is a reusable block of code that can be called from anywhere. Reusable block of code that can be called anywhere. And the reusable block of code performs a specific action. A specific action. So let me define another function. So let's create we want to create a function that adds two numbers and returns the result. So to create a function that adds two numbers and return the results, we write it out. We say function and we write the name. Say the name is add numbers, and we would put into those that bracket. Remember I said that bracket is to take in our inputs if the function has an input. So num1, say num2. Note that we are using variables here because we want our function be to have different use case. If we don't use variable, our function will be limited to just whatever we are using it for. But when we have variables in the input, the functions can now be used for different cases. So your add numbers can be used to add say 5 and 10, can also be used to add 10 and 20, can also be used to add anything at all. So let's now define what does it mean to add numbers. This is us defining our function. So for example, I can say let result be equal to all of this and I return result. Here my function basically adds two numbers and it returns the result. Then we move on to calling the functions. Here I call the function add numbers, but note that this function add numbers basically just returned the results. We did not tell the computer how to use the results. We did not tell the computer whether you want to print out the results or not. That's a different case. So for example, if I want to print out the result, let me just define a variable. I can call it um, res. I can say res is equal to all of this. Then I can choose to do whatever I want with res. This is me here printing into my log the results from here. Another thing you can do something like this, say let res2 be equal to add numbers plus add numbers. So you can see me calling that same function in different using different inputs, and it will give me the answer based on that. So it returned this. So everything here is going to be represented by 50. Everything here is going to be represented by 15. This computer is bad in maths. 50, 15. The answer should be 65. So if I do, this is not 65. Computer don't. So this added this and it gave me my answer. If I should run this, let me run it and let's see. Let's start debugging. Let's see what would happen. You can see it gave me 65. This was 15. This is 50 plus 15 and it gave me 65. So basically this is a function definition. A function is a reusable block of code that can be called anywhere, and it usually performs a specific actions. Functions are made to perform a specific action. I hope you get that. Thank you. Um, I can move forward from there to tell you that over time, functions used to be defined using this keyword functions, like I said earlier. But in ES5, I think ES5, new conventions were introduced on how to define function. So rather than just writing this keyword, I can just define a function like I would define a constant. I can then I'll give it a name. Const numbers is equal to, instead of saying this function, I'll just go ahead and put in my brackets. So this is another way of defining a function. You write the name, const in front of it. You write the name and you say is equal to the inputs. Let's still use num1, num2. And after that, you use this arrow. Arrow is equal to and greater than, and you have your curly bracket in it. The implementation can be very similar to the one that we have above. So this is also a function, and this function is very similar to this, but the way and the convention that we used in defining this function is different from this. This used to be the norm, but Um, Due to reviews in JavaScript, this is how functions are being written lately. Um, so you have const, the name of the function, the set of inputs that that function will be taking. If it's going to be taking the inputs, is going to be in bracket. Then you would have this arrow sign, which is equal to and greater than. And after that, you can define your block. This and this function is basically saying the same thing. It's just different versions of JavaScript that we have this syntax for writing function, and we have this for writing function. Normally you can use either of this and this, but since this is a more recent way of writing functions, I will choose to write my functions like this. Thank you.